I'll share my screen. And I just want to thank all of the sponsors for the meeting. I wish we could be with you in person, but hopefully with access to the slides and conversations we'll have in the future, we can launch some collaboration. So I come to you from Berkeley, California. And as Xiaofeng said, it's a pleasure to work with her organization, with a number of universities and national laboratories in China. And what I'll focus my comments on are really some of the opportunities to work together now that, despite the politics going on more generally and the recent summit in Anchorage, Alaska, United States and China, our climate plans are now quite closely aligned. And I'll highlight that. I am a physicist myself, but I think you'll see in the slides, I'll talk equally about the science of clean energy and also about the need for cooperation. And so any of the comments I'll make today, you can download them from our laboratory website. It's called the Renewable and Appropriate Energy Laboratory, or RAEL, rael.berkeley.edu. And I know most of you don't use Twitter in China, but if you do, you can comment, you can get updates from our laboratory here at this Twitter handle. We do also post some things on WeChat as well, but we use Twitter a little more for this. So the first thing I should say is that our laboratory, while most of the people that join are physicists, chemists, mathematicians, there's quite a focus on social science systems as well as the technical part of the work we do. And you can see where some of our students have come from. Gang He was an undergraduate at Beida. He now runs his own research laboratory at Stony Brook University. Joanna Lewis was one of the first American researchers to work on wind power in China. She worked on the Southern Grid. We have a number of projects. One of my students, Majid Azati, has done extensive work on air quality in China. Rick Duke was President Obama's advisor on climate change. Just a number of partnerships have come out of our laboratory, and they're examples of opportunities to work back and forth. In fact, we have 3 visiting scholars from China right now, one from Tsinghua, one from Renmin University, one from North China Nuclear Power University, all in residence in my laboratory right now, working on the topics I'll describe in a second. So this graph, I hope, is review for everyone. This top line in red is the path that we were on that would warm the planet by 4.5 degrees Celsius or more. The red is what countries committed to under the Paris Agreement. Unfortunately, the United States, under our previous president, left the Paris Agreement. So if we all did what we said, we would cut all of this emissions out by switching to renewable energy, by protecting forests, protecting wetlands. And that would get us about halfway to what the target was back in 2015 in Paris. Well, this also shows that even to get to the Paris target of keeping warming under 2 degrees, we still have a great deal of new science, new policy, new behavioral innovations needed. And of course, since the Paris Accords that were to limit warming to 2 degrees, we have finally moved on, and the new target is to not warm by more than 1.5 degrees. This will be very hard because we've already warmed the planet by 1.2. So we only have 0.3 of a degree more space to go. There are people who think we can't get there. I think we can. And really what I'll talk about today is why collaboration between China and the United States is probably the most important bilateral relationship to make that happen. So when we think about this new target of 1.5 degrees, you might want to turn off one of the mics there. I hope you can still hear me now. Let me know with a thumbs up in the lecture hall if you can hear me.
Oh, yes, it's good.
Very good. Okay. So while President Obama was still in office, I was asked and joined the United States State Department, even though I'm a scientist, a physicist, to work on collaborations. And so in particular, I worked with our Secretary of State, John Kerry, who is now the head of the U.S. International partnerships. He is essentially the parallel to Xi Jinping in this area. And I worked with a number of U.S. ambassadors. This was the U.S. ambassador to Morocco, where we hosted the first climate conference after the Paris Agreement. Much of the work that was laid out was really based on the agreement that the United States and China signed under President Xi and President Obama to limit our warming aggressively. Now, as we all know, the United States took a wrong turn on climate and partnership over the last 4 years. But as you heard in the opening comments, the position of the new President Biden is very aggressive on climate. And I'll try to highlight where science and international cooperation can really make these efforts go. This is just kind of a little set of snapshots of some of our collaborations, working with North China Power University, with Tsinghua, working with State Grid, the former minister Xi Jinping, our partnerships with Chongqing University, number of efforts to build hardware and build analytics so that each of our countries can aggressively decarbonize. And actually, all of the students here are students who have spent at least a year in my laboratory. The 3 Chinese students you see here on the left and the one on the right each came to us for more than 1 year of collaboration. And you'll see some of the results of that work come in the following slides. So one of the first projects we've done, I just put this up to show how big a collaboration it is. With a team based at Tsinghua, we have worked very hard with a number of colleagues from Tsinghua, from a number of other universities in China, from institutes in Germany and elsewhere, to track the amount of greenhouse gas emissions during 2020, during COVID. And this paper is available. And what you see is that compared to 2019, global emissions dropped dramatically at the peak of the COVID challenges. But unfortunately, emissions are now back up. And this really means that the countries who have said they're doing a lot to shift their economies need to do much more. So one of the things that this big international collaboration does, and again, you can if you just go to this website, Carbon Monitor, we publish the data every month. So you can download the latest information for the first few months of 2021 as well. But it's really a challenge because we have seen the emissions go back up to their pre-COVID levels. So we need to move much more quickly. Some of the examples of this have been impressive. Here in California, which is the world's 5th largest economy, we recently said that no new combustion vehicles could be sold after 2035. That was a nice start. I think it's not aggressive enough. And as you'll see in some slides coming up, other places in the world have moved more quickly. At the same time, as was mentioned before, China committed to peak their emissions by 2030 and to be carbon neutral by 2060. We believe that China actually may have already peaked emissions and that 2060 is a goal that China can certainly meet. But I'll talk a little bit more first about the goals in the United States and other countries to meet these targets through a mixture of science and technology. One of the most important features is that we will have, of course, the big international summit, COP26. This is the follow-on to the Paris meeting. It will take place in Glasgow, Scotland, in November. And what we're seeing is that 3 really large players, the European Union, China, and California, now amount to over half of all electric vehicle sales. And so what we really need to see are more aggressive plans. China has an aggressive new energy vehicle plan by 2035. The European Union is currently revising their targets. Most recently, the United Kingdom has said that they will do what China said. They will go to no more gas-powered vehicles can be sold, and they will beat us by 5 years. They plan now on 2030. California, we're working on new policies now to become more aggressive. If all of the things that the countries do, if they do what they've said, instead of the current pathway we're on to warm the planet by 3 degrees, we are currently in a situation where if China does everything you say, if we do everything we say in the United States, that we would limit warming to just over 2 degrees, about 2.1 degrees. And of course, we believe that we need to get much lower still, but only by making good on these first targets can become more aggressive. Here in California, our goal was to be 20% powered by solar, wind, geothermal, sustainable biomass, and ocean energy by 2010. We missed our target. We did not meet that target until 2013. Our target for 2020 was 1/3 powered by renewable energy. Our target for 2030 was 50% powered by renewable energy until 2 years ago, when California passed a new law requiring us to get to 100% clean energy by 2045 and a target for 2030 of 60%. California is currently operating here in 2021, as we speak right now, at 7 p.m. in the evening when the sun is going down. We are currently at, I'm looking online, at 46% renewables. And during the peak afternoon, California is now at 80% renewables. So we believe California can move its target for 100% clean energy quite a bit forward. In fact, some of the dynamics of this are very interesting, and they're very relevant for what's going on in China as well. Here you can see what we call the duck curve. This is the demand for electricity in California during the day. This is the net demand. So this is demand minus generation of renewables. You can see in 2015, very faintly at the top, it was more or less a flat curve during the day and then peak in the evening. As we've installed more and more renewables, in particular solar, you can see our net peak during the afternoon, when we used to have high demand, is now very low. It's almost zero. Our new peak is now in the evening. And this is very important for electrical planning. This means that installing energy storage is critical. And this means that utilizing electric vehicles that can sell power back to the grid in the evening becomes an important dynamic. We're already doing this in Shenzhen, which I'll mention shortly. And so essentially California's plan that was to ramp down to zero in 2045, we now think we need to end the sale of electric vehicles sooner. We need to follow other countries like the United Kingdom I mentioned, and now the US eastern state of Massachusetts, so that we can hit these targets earlier and earlier. Our new target, hopefully to be announced soon, will be to move this target forward. And again, as we look at some of the technologies that can help us get there, thinking about the science of solar is one of the important areas. This curve is called Moore's Law, or a log normal curve. You'll notice this is the price of solar plotted not against time, but total amount of solar deployed in the world. You see in log space for the engineers in the room and scientists. It's a very steady curve. Solar is now the cheapest form of new energy in the United States. And just 2 days ago, the Secretary of Energy announced that the US was investing now several million US dollars more to try to bring this target down, to have cheaper solar, more ubiquitous deployments in opportunities to cover buildings, to cover roadways, to really become much more aggressive. Same thing is happening for energy storage. I won't go into the details for time, but these are these same learning curve or Moore's Law curves for energy storage. This is lithium ion, the technology in our phones and laptops, but we also have other technologies like nickel metal hydride batteries. These are in orange. Flow batteries, this is a liquid battery. This is the purple. All of these are also showing these strong drops. This is one of the areas where the science leadership in the United States and China and elsewhere is critical, as long as we also get these technologies into the markets. Here is an example. This is a flow battery installed 6 years ago in Southern California. This is a flow battery in these tanks here, powered by solar. And this system provides 4 hours of storage into the evening. And Southern California utility uses this when the sun goes down. They store energy here and they sell back into the evening. This is part of a mandate for storage. It's something that we're currently working on with colleagues in a number of US states. We're also working with colleagues at Sichuan University on some of the first targets like this we hope to see deployed in China. And we also have projects at the household level. This is a group of 40 homes. This is in a low-income part of my city here in the East Bay of California. And in this case, we are installing solar on all the rooftops, but instead of powering homes directly, all the energy is stored in a battery here and is sent back to each home, as well as sent back to electric vehicle charging, so that people who do not own a home, they live in an apartment building, like the apartment building you see here in the left corner, can charge their vehicles up even if they don't own a home or have a driveway. When we look across the United States, the policy landscape, I will argue, is perhaps the most important feature. Here we have the price of electricity for new generation across the United States. And I'll just add to it so you can see where's where. Where it's green, wind is the cheapest form of energy. Where it's blue, nuclear is cheapest. Where it's gray or it's rust color, orange, gas is the cheapest. And where it's purple, solar is the cheapest. But this is with no market policy. In California, our policy is not to have no price on pollution. We have a price of $20 US. If I plug this in across the country, you can see, I'll go back and forth, you can see essentially that solar expands to cover much of the South, much of the West, right where I am right here, where Xiaofeng lives as well. You can see wind doesn't change, but gas retreats. Coal is not the cheapest anywhere in the United States. $20 a ton is fine, but just last month, President Biden said we must be more aggressive. What the president has done is to adopt something called not the market price, but the social cost of carbon. The social cost of carbon is about $50. And if you see what the map looks like now, you see gas is gone from everywhere except for a very rainy, cloudy area on our border with Canada. Solar and wind take over most of the country with, again, a small spot of nuclear left. And I just post here, this is the famous order now signed by President Biden. It says we will use the social cost of carbon in our analysis. And this is really where I think that people like myself who work on the science and technology must partner in new ways with people who work on the economics and policy to bring these technologies into action. In fact, one of our partnerships, this was a trip that Xiaofeng and I took together to State Grid Electric Vehicle Company. Here was a map. This is now several years old when China had only 2 million electric vehicles in use. Now there's many more. But here we have a situation mapping the charging stations and the vehicles. And for time, I'll skip a little bit of a movie. What I'll jump to is a project in Shenzhen. And I hope that since Shenzhen's so close to you, that many of you have already had the experience to drive in one of the taxis. And the city of Shenzhen worked with us at my laboratory at Berkeley, as well as the laboratory of one of my students, Chen Zheng, who lives in Chengdu, to manage the fleet of electric taxis. And here are these taxis being presented to the drivers. Shenzhen now has over 29,000 electric taxis. That's more than 95% of the fleet. And our laboratory and my student Cheng Zheng's company, we manage the data. And the first problem that we saw, this is just taking a picture, I'll run the video in a second. But here we see the electric vehicles lining up to recharge. I'll play the video so you can see this is real time. You can see the main road in the back. Some of you may recognize this part. This is just downtown near what is now the largest charging station. And so when you get too many electric vehicles waiting to recharge at the same time, of course, what we do is we build an app. Here is that app, and it shows the drivers which charging stations have the most spaces available. You can see this is the largest charging station, not only in Shenzhen, this is the largest EV charging station in the world, with over 600 charging bays. You can see there's only a few openings, but drivers can reserve a spot. They can't be more than 5 minutes late or they lose their spot. So instead of waiting in the long queue to recharge, they can now reserve spots. We're now working with the government to install induction charging in the roads so that you can actually drive down some of the roads and recharge. But it's an example of using smart information technology or the Internet of Things to make this process go much more rapidly. So the last thing I want to say, just in my few minutes to close up, is that in addition to collaborating on growing the fleets of electric vehicles in the United States and China, and working very hard to accelerate new policies for more clean electricity, both something that we have some states in the United States doing very well, other states doing very poorly. Same thing is true in China. As part of your stimulus package after COVID, unfortunately, more than 70 coal-fired power plants were authorized as part of a stimulus recovery package. This is something that cannot happen. Same thing in the United States. Some states, California and New York, are pushing forward on clean energy. Others are not moving as quickly. So we have problems at home. But one of the other areas where the United States and China need to work much more closely together is on partnering in some of the poorest countries. So 2 years ago, I am a member of the IEEE, and we worked together on a special issue of the proceedings of the IEEE to look at clean energy options for developing nations. So this is an example of a microhydro project in Laos. This is a publication we brought out in Nature 2 years ago, highlighting the opportunities to meet community needs. In China, the Belt and Road Program. In the United States, the work of the State Department and USAID. These are opportunities for us to work together to bring clean energy instead of damming rivers. This is a river that may be dammed for power exports to China, just like we in the United States are also investing in some dirty power plants when we could be taking advantage of all these low-cost opportunities. And this is really an opportunity for us to show to the world, the US and China together, that we can work much more cooperatively on clean energy. And I'll just close with an example here. This is in the eastern part of the Congo, one of the most complex countries in Africa in terms of politics. This is the largest solar project in the Congo. This is just in the city of Goma on the border with Rwanda. This is a joint project done by my laboratory and the United Nations, for which our partnership with Sichuan University and China Electric Power University have been part of the design. These panels are Chinese manufactured panels. We worked on this project together, bringing the largest, this is over 1 megawatt of solar right in the middle of a city that has intermittent power outages. It's an example of partnering on clean energy to support local development. So I will stop there. I hope I haven't gone too long with the press on time. And again, if you're interested in the material, you can go to the website. But I believe the conference organizers have the slides for which they're welcome to share with you. So I apologize. I cannot stay for the question and answer at the end. I'll stay for another 15 minutes. But again, I want to thank you, Xie, for letting me talk with you today. Let me return control of the screen to Xiaofeng and go from there.
Yeah, thank you very much.